At 6:12 in the morning in California, lethal fentanyl was packed for widespread destruction. Army-grade firearms were moving alongside cold storage units holding human body parts. Criminal syndicates had infiltrated California's train lines, violating the country's infrastructure from the inside out. Observe closely so we do not merely concentrate on a street corner pusher but rather examine the entire organization. We must uncover what powers the distribution and supply chains, aiming to follow the trail right to the syndicates to ensure they face the consequences. With 127 people captured and 43 carriages confiscated, narcotics and arms were flowing through the nation's railways. This represented the most significant internal compromise of transit security ever discovered within American borders. However, the true surprise was not the contraband itself, but rather the individuals responsible for transporting it. These were individuals with total clearance, the very people relied upon to safeguard the network. Instead of shielding the country's tracks, they surrendered them directly to the criminal organizations. Please hit the like button and remain here because the following events impact every citizen. The Bureau verified they had found a massive trafficking ring operating within the country's second biggest rail corporation. Shortly past 11 at night, a cargo locomotive on the main route decelerated and halted surprisingly. An automated scale under the rails had silently triggered a warning regarding the load. Investigators showed up carrying torches, anticipating nothing more than a minor mechanical failure. However, the discovery they made froze them in their tracks. A single freight container weighed almost 900 pounds more than the manifest stated it should. Such a massive difference in weight does not occur merely by chance. Officers unsealed a maintenance hatch located along the flank of the carriage. Concealed behind it, they discovered a duplicate metal barrier that had been recently fused and remained cool. Once the secret chamber was unlocked, the reality became impossible to overlook. The interior held commercial sacks of powdered fentanyl sufficient to intoxicate whole metropolitan areas. Next to the drugs lay combat weapons coated in oil to prevent corrosion. Piled at the rear were cooling bins typically utilized for moving harvested body parts. This was not merely a smuggling ruse orchestrated by a lone outlaw. It was a mobile felony operation concealed within a merchant train that the public relied on daily. If a line transporting a third of national cargo can be seized internally, then no network is genuinely secure. Please comment, Protect America, if you agree that essential infrastructure should never be owned by felons. The discovery federal officers made on that late-night locomotive compelled an instant change in perspective. This event was not merely a solitary effort to traffic illegal goods. It did not involve a rebellious team or a single dishonest employee. Instead, it served as an alarm, proving a vast entity was lurking openly. As detectives followed the documents, the routes, and the deeds, a frightening image started to emerge. 2 years prior, the nation's second biggest train firm had silently been sold. This corporation managed 31.000 miles of railway and transported almost one-third of all American cargo. The transaction seemed legitimate and prosperous on the surface. It was a multi-billion-dollar purchase by a finance consortium named Pacific Rail Holdings. Economic news outlets lauded the agreement while shareholders cheered. Everyday activities continued without interruption, and the locomotives departed on schedule. No warnings were triggered, yet a distinct truth existed behind the glossy announcements. Government fiscal experts found that the holding company was not a real entity. It was merely a facade constructed upon other facades. Businesses listed in Panama, Belize, Hong Kong, and Dubai were created to obscure the true proprietors. When detectives tracked the funds deeply enough, every route arrived at one destination. The Sinaloa and CJNG syndicates were collaborating within American borders at this magnitude for the first time. Only months after the acquisition, the railway firm started transforming internally. Syndicate agents were silently installed into critical roles throughout the organization. Overseers of maintenance managed the repair depots while logistics directors determined carriage destinations. Supervisors on the night rotation authorized cargoes that were absent from legal records. Technicians reconfigured cold storage units with secret metal chambers that standard checks could not detect. A formerly reliable national transport network turned into a mobile passage for crime. Narcotics streamed from the west towards the east while arms traveled southward. The most terrifying freight involved cooled crates transporting body parts disguised as clinical supplies. This toxicity traversed the nation quietly on the tracks for almost 2 years. Until that lone locomotive halted past 11 at night. Nobody knew the railways were already seized from the inside. Please remain with this narrative and distribute it to others. The subsequent events determined if the national lines would be reclaimed or forfeited permanently. By the break of day, government bureaus had witnessed sufficient evidence. The covert files, changed routes, and late-night shipments indicated a network too perilous to overlook. At 4:18 in the morning, during the silent period when trains travel unseen, the country initiated a historic synchronized assault. This mission carried the straightforward designation of Operation Black Storm. Spanning 12 states, squads from various federal and local law enforcement bodies were stationed at key railway sites. Monitoring drones floated immediately above the mist while fortified trucks entered vacant grounds near quiet locomotives. Officers equipped with night sight gear and secure communicators waited for a single unified order. The command was issued precisely at 30 seconds past 4:18 in the morning. Instantly, the silence of the train depot was broken. In Missouri, officers raided a primary transfer center where 3 syndicate bosses were on duty. These managers attempted to seal the command post. Yet tactical units cut through the entrance with hydraulic tools. Once inside, the gang members began shooting. A brief yet aggressive exchange of fire continued for under a minute. Upon its conclusion, the team captured the post and found logs tracking 2 tons of narcotics leaving soon. In Arizona, federal authorities encircled a workshop utilized for altering cold storage wagons. As the officers approached, a team of syndicate technicians tried fleeing on a maintenance engine. Strategic teams obstructed the rails, compelling them to give up. Within the garage, investigators located 27 cooling units containing secret voids big enough for illicit goods. In Illinois, the conflict was significantly more noisy. A storage facility run by the syndicate near the tracks rejected orders to yield. Stun grenades illuminated the pre-dawn gloom as teams broke through the cargo entrances. They discovered a dozen laborers inside packing methamphetamine into boxes labeled as groceries. Multiple suspects tried to run down a rear staircase but were apprehended by agents waiting outdoors. Concurrently in Texas, the primary target, a massive train awaiting approval, was taken without violence. Satellite beacons verified it held one of the biggest assortments of illegal cargo in the mission. Officers inspected every wagon, revealing plastic-wrapped guns, bags of drugs, and misidentified freezers. By 6:03 in the morning, the mission was finished. Authorities held 127 individuals, confiscated 43 carriages, and secured 7 railway sites. For the first time in 2 years, the network ceased transporting dangerous contraband through American towns. The physical fight had ended, yet the inquiry was merely starting. If you support the personnel who halted this danger, please like and comment Black Storm. This helps ensure others understand the importance of this narrative. As the sun rose following the raid, agents finally inspected their confiscations. Discoveries within the wagons and depots exposed a scheme far more sophisticated than anticipated. The corporation was not merely moving illegal items, it was designed specifically for that purpose. The rolling stock itself provided the initial surprise. At the Arizona workshop, transportation experts analyzed the cooling units seized just hours before. Externally, they appeared to be regular freezers for dairy, vegetables, and beef. However, under the deck lay a secondary cooling circuit powered by a camouflaged compressor. This enabled the transport of sensitive loads like sterile packed organs which standard freight could not handle. Implements located in the shop demonstrated the exactness of these alterations. Laser cutters and heavy-duty welders were customized to open carriage walls without leaving visible scars. Each element was crafted to deceive government examiners. While detectives recorded the blueprints, assault squads continued sweeping the premises. In a corner, they found a hardened chamber with steel plates fused to the interior. Officers opened it using a minor explosive device. The reverberation moved through the station like a clap of thunder. The interior held 50 dark boxes containing fentanyl wrapped in clinical plastic. A hidden hatch in the floor connected to a maintenance passage. This proved the syndicate had arranged exit paths even on government land. Nationwide in Missouri, a comparable situation unfolded at the captured transfer center. Investigators there discovered the network's command system installed on terminals masked as repair stations. It managed which locomotives diverted to hidden tracks and which skipped inspections. The program automatically generated breakdown warnings to camouflage irregular pauses. Each alteration was recorded using fraudulent staff credentials. The earlier shootout had occurred immediately overhead of this operations room. Projectile impacts still marked the steel partitions where the bosses had tried to defend themselves. The firefight was brief, yet its ferocity demonstrated the gang's desperation to save the site. Officers found guns, secure communicators, and disposable mobiles containing unlisted maps. In Illinois, the narrative remained exactly the same. The depot assault that broke the morning quiet exposed a manufacturing conveyor. Laborers there were boxing methamphetamine into containers marked as nutritional provisions. Analysis later proved some crates were destined for student lunchrooms and elder care facilities. This mixed the syndicate's toxins right into the country's most relied upon distribution lines. Government agents also uncovered something significantly more sinister. They found vacant cooling bins with digital tags linked to fake hospitals. These were intended for body parts that would never be tracked or investigated. The organization had constructed a logistics chain that functioned like a biological entity. It was rapid, quiet, and capable of adjusting to changes. From secret wagon spaces to compromised managers, every component was built intentionally. Operation Black Storm had successfully shattered the backbone of this beast. However, detectives now understood the reality that this empire moved more than just contraband. It had evolved into the central pump of a criminal body using U.S. rails as a private road. Removing the exterior layer was merely the initial step. The true peril lay in what stayed concealed under years of rot. This included files, financial paths, and moles who were still undetected. The period following the raid was expected to provide answers, but instead revealed a maze. The confiscated wagons and electronics were just the observable tip of the iceberg. This criminal edifice had extended its roots far below the nation's transit framework. If the assault was the skirmish, the subsequent inquiry became a war requiring extreme care. Government researchers started by excavating 3 years of freight documentation. This involved millions of entries, locomotive journals, and scale readings. Recognizing specific trends happened very rapidly. Particular engines always moved during the deepest night hours. Specific managers regularly authorized unplanned halts, and certain paths showed consistent weight errors. These heavy variances were the syndicate's phantom loads meant to hide in plain sight. However, documents by themselves could not reveal the whole picture, so the FBI required spies. 2 covert agents pretending to be temporary mechanics were silently inserted into separate depots. They labored for months on double rotations, scrubbing brakes and repairing connectors. Eventually, a boss came to one of them with a hushed proposition. The offer involved additional tasks with significant wages and 0 interrogations. Suddenly, the mole descended further into the obscure operation. The assignment was to assist in fitting a new hidden chamber within a freezer wagon. The manager displayed the blueprints showing slim metal partitions and a concealed door. A cooling pipe was diverted to maintain low temperatures within the secret space. It was engineered to store narcotics or body parts. Contingent on the schedule, the operative recorded every phase while feigning ignorance of the sentinel lurking nearby. In a different region, the other spy tailed a dirty logistics chief to a distant track. Beneath faint lamps, the boss opened a wagon to show boxes of guns and drugs. He described the method, noting that every carriage appears standard externally. Every journey seems regular on the manifest. However, the actual freight remains invisible unless someone is bribed to witness it. Danger permeated the atmosphere heavily. Suddenly, gang soldiers showed up asking why the location was entered prematurely. The spy stayed quiet while backup teams miles away readied a rescue mission. Luckily, the extraction was not required, but it served as a stark warning. Even following the major assault, syndicate power still remained throughout the system. Phone taps provided an additional stratum of evidence. FBI listeners recorded chats utilizing train jargon as encrypted signals. Specific phrases referred to fentanyl, while others indicated a shipment of organs. Each deciphered sentence moved officers nearer to outlining the full leadership hierarchy. Fiscal detectives tracked the cash flow, finding hundreds of fake firms shifting money globally. Bribes to compromised staff were masked as safety premiums or danger pay. The organ trafficking even utilized a distinct laundering path labeled as waste removal. As authorities connected the dots, opposition from the criminals intensified. Some workers loyal to the gang tried wiping electronic files while others deserted their stations. During a nervous standoff in Colorado, agents shot at guards attempting to burn a computer lab. The fire was extinguished, yet the signal was unmistakable. The syndicate realized their options were diminishing. By the inquiry's conclusion, the FBI had charted every compromised point and laundered dollar. While the raid broke the seal, this detailed probe exposed the core reality. It demonstrated that the huge rail firm was not merely penetrated but fully weaponized internally. Upon the complete results reaching the Capitol, the reaction was swift and unique. 3 major government departments assembled for a crisis session that very evening. The mission had uncovered something far more significant than basic contraband trafficking. It represented a frontal attack on the essential framework of the United States. For the first time, an overseas crime group had assumed command of a domestic railway. At sunrise, the top legal official addressed the media with shocking news. The country's number 2 train provider had been bought and armed by cartels. The items moving on those rails were not goods but toxicity and agony. Government confiscations commenced immediately following the announcement. Every depot linked to the scheme was surrounded by a federal defensive cordon. Weaponized sentries monitored the gates while locomotives were halted for checking. Countless guiltless laborers arrived for work to discover agents questioning their bosses. Some staff cried witnessing the firm they relied on crumble in front of them. However, not every individual gave up without a fight. In New Mexico, a faction of gang enforcers locked themselves in an office during the raid. The siege continued for 13 minutes until grenades broke the glass. Officers rushed in, capturing the men before they could wreck the digital storage. In Georgia, 2 dirty drivers tried to escape using a train engine. They aimed for an unwatched siding where a getaway car was parked. Bureau cars obstructed the rails, causing sparks as the locomotive halted abruptly. Yet the bigger emergency was not the shooting but the national interruption. For 2 days, a third of the country's cargo system was paralyzed. Supermarkets alerted customers about food lags while clinics feared for their stocks. Millions of elderly viewers felt a growing anxiety watching the reports. If a syndicate could seize the trains, they wondered what else might be compromised. Lawmakers acted with speed, starting urgent sessions in under a week. They summoned specialists and the shock directors who had unwittingly served the mob. New laws were enacted with uncommon cooperation between the parties. These required intense scans for freezes and clear records of overseas investors. Unannounced government checks were also mandated for all significant transit carriers. A fresh squad focusing on business penetration was created inside the FBI. Nevertheless, the cost to people was inevitable as 60,000 workers faced doubt. Some worried their pensions would vanish while others dreaded false accusations. Communities centered on the depots prepared themselves for a financial blow. Yet amidst the panic, government chiefs reiterated a single statement. They declared that the rails are the property of the citizens, not gangs. To rebuild confidence, the state initiated the Safe Rails Security Project. Elderly residents near the lines received updates on the fresh protection measures. Regional police collaborated with federal consultants to watch distant tracks once used by criminals. Gradually, the system revived, 1 locomotive and 1 mile at a time. However, it operated within a changed existence where fragility was understood. Citizens realized the lengths to which crime groups would go. The mission halted the syndicate. But the teaching moment would last much longer. If the country relaxes, even the iron paths that constructed it can become crime routes. The findings of this probe extend well past narcotics, arms, or one firm. It uncovered a difficult reality regarding the contemporary United States. Our best assets turn into weaknesses when supervision falters and avarice is concealed. Officials discussed boundaries and street offenses for years. Yet this proved something worse. The danger did not originate in dark corners or back streets. It emerged from executive suites and the very networks meant to transport the country. The syndicate did not slip onto the tracks, it purchased its entry. The political ramifications happened instantly, forcing Congress to confess a mistake. Infrastructure had been viewed as a financial tool rather than a security concern. Rules designed for earnings missed the criminal proprietorship, trusting ledgers over intuition. For almost 2 years, that ignorance permitted toxins to move unhindered across the land. Strategically, this event altered the American perspective on domestic safety. Logistics and medical networks are now seen as battlegrounds, not just commerce. If felons master movement, they can distribute damage silently and massively. However, there is also a teaching about resilience and power. Once the risk was identified, government bodies responded with swiftness and cohesion. Diverse law enforcement groups united to recover a stolen system. The operation demonstrated that the nation can still reply with strength when threatened. The issue is not if the ring was halted, but if the lesson remains. The country must recall what it discovered during this crisis. The subsequent danger might not show up accompanied by brutality. It could appear via agreements, financiers, and entirely lawful paperwork. If you think infrastructure should aid citizens instead of felons, please hit like, comment, protect America, if you feel responsibility should extend to the highest levels. To remain updated on this ongoing inquiry, please subscribe to the channel. The trains are running once more, but watchfulness must travel alongside them.